Hello and welcome to this presentation titled Telephone Collection Tips, another in the 10-minute tips series of recorded programs for credit and collection professionals. My name is Michael Dennis. I'll be the presenter today. Let's begin with an introduction. My opinion is this, that collectors can and should make the telephone their primary and preferred collection tool. Why? Because a phone call is simply far more difficult for a customer to ignore than a collection letter or a dunning notice. In addition, a telephone call from a collector to a debtor is generally going to take less time than it would to generate a letter or even an email to that same person. An added benefit of using the telephone is this. If the individual the collector wants and needs to speak to is out, the collector can ask to speak to someone else. Telephone collection tips. Here are a few ideas that I would encourage you to consider implementing immediately to the extent that you're not already using these ideas. Number one, organize your thoughts before picking up the phone. Number two, have all the facts at your fingertip. For example, how long has your company done business with this particular customer? Has there been any previous commitment for payment of this outstanding balance that the customer has broken? Have you spoken to the customer in the past about this particular past due balance? Does the customer have a history of making and then breaking payment commitments? So these are examples of facts that you should have on hand before you make the phone call. In addition, you should have a goal, an outcome in mind before picking up the phone. During any call with any customer, you need to be courteous but firm. Firm, professional, and courteous. Try to eliminate background noise to the extent that that's possible. Remember to keep your discussion brief and to the point. Remain professional no matter what the provocation. Just a quick aside on this particular point. Some customers will try to pick fights, and you wonder why they're doing that, and the answer is probably their goal is to derail the collection discussion. So the customers will be aggressive or confrontational or rude as a way of deflecting and changing the course of the discussion about the status of their account, which is of course past due. If the customer does not offer a commitment for immediate payment in full of the entire past due balance, then the collector needs to negotiate for a reasonable and realistic payment commitment. As a collector, you need to make sure that you're speaking to a decision maker. You want to speak to someone that has full authority to make and to keep any commitment for payment that's agreed during your discussion. Always confirm payment commitments via email following a discussion with the delinquent debtor. And here's a quick example of how simple that could be. So we'll just assume we just got off the phone with someone who made a commitment to clear a past due balance by paying us $1,000 on Friday. I would immediately send that person an email and would say something along these lines. Thank you for your time in our recent discussion. As we discussed, you indicated a payment of $1,000 to clear past due invoice number 12345 will be mailed to us on Friday of this week. Please contact me at the telephone number shown below if this payment commitment changes for any reason. Thank you for your time and attention to this matter. Best regards, etc. Telephone collection tips continue. When you're talking to a delinquent customer, ask what you can do to get the customer to pay your invoices in the future on time, or at least closer to on time. Don't multitask during collection calls. Calls with customers are important enough that they deserve your undivided attention. And I know that goes against the conventional wisdom that says you could be multitasking, but my opinion is we need to be focused during our discussions with customers. To the extent that a customer calls you, try to return calls that you receive the same day. It's important, in my opinion, to block out part of your day primarily for outbound collection calls. My preferred time personally is to block out between 9 and noon and between 1 and 2 every day to basically do nothing but schedule and make outbound collection calls to delinquent debtors. Take notes during the call. Take brief notes so that you are focused on what it is that the customer is or is not telling you during that discussion. Remember to try to frame a discussion with the customer about a past due balance as a joint problem that both you and the customer need to try to resolve together and need to try to resolve as quickly as possible. And remember to ask lots of questions. Ask delinquent customers lots of questions, lots of who, what, where, when, why types of questions, so that you have as much information as you need to make informed decisions about what to do next in connection with that past due balance. Consider asking open-ended questions as a way to keep the customer engaged, especially in a situation in which the customer is not being very forthcoming about issues that have prevented their company from sending payment. Please don't delay in calling delinquent customers. For example, you don't need to give customers a grace period before you call them to ask about the status of a past due balance. Learn how to become a better negotiator. We talked about the idea in a previous slide that we need to negotiate when accounts become delinquent if the customer doesn't promise us payment in full. But we need to be good at negotiating, and there's a whole process associated with becoming a better negotiator. Try to avoid interactions with blockers. Deal only with decision makers. When you're talking with one of your delinquent customers, strive to follow the 4 C's of collection calls, which are speak with clarity, speak with confidence, speak with conviction, and speak with courage. Calls are cost effective. Telephone calls are the best way to collect from past due customers. They are the most cost effective and the most cost efficient and the most effective and the most efficient way to collect a past due balance. An additional advantage associated with picking up the phone and talking to a customer, in other words, engaging in a two-way communication with a delinquent debtor, is that if there is a legitimate problem, for example, a pricing dispute on an invoice, you, the collector, can start to, well, you'll learn about it sooner, so you can start to resolve it more quickly. And we know that the sooner the problem is addressed and resolved, the sooner payment can be received. Dialing for dollars. As a consultant, from time to time, I see collectors that are focused on the number of calls they make, on the volume, on the quantity of calls, rather than on the quality of interactions that they're having with delinquent customers. When you're dialing for dollars, when you're focused only on how many calls you can make in a given day, you're not focused on the right thing. Instead of dialing for dollars, as I mentioned in a previous slide, we need to be focused on negotiating with delinquent customers to get them to provide a reasonable and realistic commitment for payment of the past due balance. What happens when you're focused on quantity over quality is that collectors tend to ask about the past due balance and then accept whatever commitment the customer offers. Well, there's an old saying in collections that goes something like this: the customer's first offer is typically the customer's worst offer. So the reality is this type of approach, this passive approach to collections, is not going to optimize your company's collection performance. We as collectors need to deal assertively with delinquent customers. We have to work with them and we have to extract from them the best payment commitment that we can get. Thank you for your time and attention in this 10-minute tips program. By the way, if you're interested in hearing the entire 1-hour presentation on telephone collection ideas, please contact the sponsoring credit association for more information about the on-demand program. And have a great day.